All right. Mic check. I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron. CWB Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest. Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Good day, and thank you for coming for another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and I'm with you guys as always here to have a super good time with a cool dude who's out in Ontario. Today's episode, we got a young man named Michael Kaufmann who's on Instagram. He's out there in the Ontario, in the Toronto region, and he's trying to get his business rolling, and he's got a really cool project, which is, I believe, squat 6 stands. So Mike, how's it going?
I'm good. How's it going with you?
Good, man. Good. It's been a long day, like we were talking before the show, but us welders, we're all workaholics. You can't make us stop.
No, exactly. 9 to 5s don't exist in our world.
9 to 5, but you're looking at the clock from the back end, so it's actually like 5 p.m. till 9 in the morning, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So I've been looking at what you got going on. Did I get the name of your company, of your project here correct? Squat 6 racks or stands? Sorry.
Squats. Yeah, squat 6 stands. That's it.
Okay, cool. And I got you recommended to me because I heard that you were doing cool things out there, and I did a little bit of research, and sounds like you're a fitness guy, and you got into trying to fill this gap of the fitness craze that happened when the pandemic started.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I wouldn't really call it so much of a craze as the pandemic happened. I think people are always into fitness and
Mhm.
just for general health and whatnot, but really the staying at home really just drove everybody to realize how important it is in everyday life and whatnot, right? Especially for mental health and all that kind of stuff. And people are realizing like the significance of kind of a home gym, right? So the demand just created like a market for it, especially a good Canadian product. Sorry to interrupt
Yeah,
there.
no, 100%. And you know what? I'll tell you a story about how stupid I am. I like working out. I've always been a workout sports guy my whole life, and I had like a pretty good home gym. Like I had a weightlifting bar, racks, and dumbbells, and resistance bands, and all this stuff. And I was working at the college, and the college has a super fly gym with a personal trainer that you get as part of being staff. So I was like going to the personal trainer at the school and getting really into going with the programs that he was setting up for me, and I was loving it. And then I was like, I don't need all this gym equipment at home.
Mhm.
I'm gonna sell it all because I got this, awesome gym that I can go to every day. So I sold all my gym stuff. Like I'm talking like all of it except for like a few small things for like $250 to like a friend's kid, you know? And then the pandemic hits like 2 months later. And now try to buy some weights now, man. Like you're paying like $1,000 for 5 pounds. Like,
Oh my God. Just like the price of steel, right? These commodities are flying up and
yeah, man. I was like, I'm so dumb. But you know what? For that kid that bought all my gear, you got a ripping deal, man.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, he did.
So let's go back in time here. Let's let people know who Mike is, right? Because everyone has their own journey, and this is where you ended up. So let's talk about where that started. So where were you born, Mike?
So I was born in Ontario, more specifically Vaughan, Ontario, just north of Toronto. And yeah, kind of my story isn't anything too crazy, but yeah, the whole welding, fabrication, steel industry is kind of in my blood. My dad came over to Canada when he was 17 years old. He was welding back in Austria, came here looking for work, and he started working for a miscellaneous fabrication company that it does like structural steel, miscellaneous metals, all that kind of stuff. He ended up buying the company out with 4 partners, and that was kind of his journey in that field. And at the time they were fabrication shop only, and he actually started his own gig installing the projects at nighttime, right?
Hmm.
So he always had kind of me and my brother helping him along and whatnot. So I've been doing this for quite some time, but on weekends, on nights, all that kind of stuff, like 16-year-old Mike just slugging around steel beams and stuff like that. But yeah, kind
Not
of.
that's very similar. Like we came to Canada. My dad was a welder. I grew up around welding, and I was same thing. 15 was my first summer job with him in the shop. I actually tried working not in welding because I was like, I don't want to do what my dad does, and went and worked at Dairy Queen and made like $3 an hour. And then I was like, nuts to that. Like, I'm gonna go work with my dad,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it pulled me in, like it pulled me in. But let's go back. 'Cause I got a question for you. Knowing that your dad's a welder, as a kid coming up, growing up, you see your dad come home, he's dirty, like welder dad, right? Kind of grumpy from a day of work and just like wants to sit on the couch and rest. And did he try to steer you away from the trades, or was it always right from day one being like, "Yeah, you should check this out, or you should follow in my footsteps"? What was kind of the advice you were getting from your family?
So my family always wanted me to go to university. That was the biggest part of anything. They let me do whatever I wanted to do. Growing up, I used to play a lot of music. So playing shows in Toronto, stuff they didn't want me to do when I was younger, but I did anyways. They were very supportive of that. But the one biggest thing was, because obviously my dad didn't go to university or anything like that, they wanted me to go to university. So just I guess to see what else is out there. But they never steered me away from the trades, but they also, didn't steer me in that direction either. Kind of just let me do what I wanted. But the biggest part was university.
And you said you have a brother too. So was he in the same game plan?
Yeah, and well, he was the type of guy that went straight to work after, right? He actually started his own landscape company there,
Mm.
and now he does landscape construction and all that kind of stuff.
So did you end up going to university at all, or did
I
you? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I did. I went to University of Guelph. I studied history and music. So
Mhm.
I graduated with my degree, and then after that, it's right back to work in the shop.
Yeah, that's a tough gig. The arts degrees are very valuable, but in a different way that people think, right? Like, it's like, oh, what are you gonna do with an arts degree? Well, they're kind of right. It's tough to get a gig, like a job, a good paying job with an arts degree. But it also arts degrees they kind of open your mind up to be more flexible and more like aware of like society and trends and things like that. I always find that people with arts degrees are usually pretty freaking smart, you know?
Yeah, and you know what? The one thing is maybe university didn't take me in the path that I should have been taking right at the get go. But what it did is number one, it gave me it I think built like my own type of personality. Like I have
Mhm.
pretty good people skills, you know what I mean, and customer service and all that kind of stuff. And realistically, I owe that to kind of my growth in the 4 years of university for sure. If I went straight to the trades after high school, like who knows if I would have had that type of growth that I did experience, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I always find that one of the biggest takeaways of university that I had, because I went to university for philosophy, so like I mean, I get it, you
Yeah,
know, is that you learn to be patient because a lot of us that go into trades, we kind of have this thing in us where we're really active. We're like we don't like to sit and we like to get out there and we like to do things and build things and growing up, play with things, rip things apart, trash things, just this kind of mentality that leads you into the trades. But when you go to university, you got to sit in a desk for like 6 hours, and a lot of people can't handle that, especially tradespeople. Like that's like hell. You know what I mean? So if you can
yeah,
actually do that for 4 years and get a degree, like you learn to be patient.
yeah. No, that makes total sense.
So then you come out of school, you're looking at your prospects as a history music degree, which I think sounds fascinating, by the way. Then what was the step there? Did you go, "Hey, dad, I need to work. Can I come work for the shop?" Or were you like, "I'm gonna go out somewhere else and just see what's up"?
So it was kind of funny. Like when I was in university, I worked for actually the town of Richmond Hill, so just a little city that's just east of us there. And same thing, kind of like just cut grass during the summer, did some landscaping and all that kind of stuff, right? So that was like a nice cushy job, for the 4 years I was in university. But when I got out of it, it's just you can go work for somebody like that, or you can go work for your father. You know what I mean? So I,
Hmm.
was helping him out, and I really started to, at the same time, like, I was a overweight kid coming out of university and all that kind of stuff, just getting into the gym, really. And I really liked how physical the work was, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it does feel good to move steel, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And another cool thing about it, well, what I really liked is when we went to the job site too, and we're welding back together a stair, because we work a lot of in the commercial stuff downtown Toronto, so like First Canadian Place and whatnot. And you cut up a stair and bring it downtown, hoist it up, and weld it back together and put it back up in a week. People are astonished how you could do something like that. And that was something I really respect, that my dad could do. And when people come up to him, they're like, wow, like you guys are good. And that's something that kind of like drove me to keep building what I do, and it kind of like solidified this is what I wanted to do.
Awesome. So then what was the stream then? You're working now. Did you go back to school? Did you get into the apprenticeship stream or did you just work?
So the funny thing is no, I never did an apprenticeship or anything like that. But one thing that my pops always told me was, if a guy has a good skill set, it's worth more than any apprentice or any ticket or anything like that you can have, right? And there's like, especially in the welding trade, you can either go to school or you can do the hands-on stuff and learn just as much and if not more, like being in the air and welding off the side of a building and whatnot. You know what I mean? So I was lucky enough to see everything firsthand, not only just welding and whatnot, but drafting. Like he still does all of his drafting by hand, which is kind of like a lost art. And
Hmm.
so I was able to experience, going to site, measuring, coming up with different ideas of how things should be done and what kind of complications, and really thinking ahead as well. That was like one of the biggest skill sets I learned, is how to fix a problem before it even happens.
Well, and that's one of the things is like problem solving is like 80% of fabrication because you can draw it up however you want. You're not going to know how it fits up because the ground's never perfectly straight and the buildings are never perfectly square. So you got to figure that stuff out on the go, right?
Oh yeah, and it's like little things, like even when you first get, you pick up a stringer channel from the local supplier over there, bring it back to the shop. You start looking at, one side's left hand up, one side's right hand up. Well, which leg of the channel is a little bit bigger than the other, and how are you going to fit that together, right?
Hmm.
Right. That's that they don't teach that in school.
Well, actually, they do, but it depends on the school you go to.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, there's so many different ways. Like, I didn't go to school for welding until I actually kind of topped out. So I was like loving my job. I was a fabricator. I was doing awesome stuff. But then I was like, man, I want to be like a supervisor. Like, I want to like see where I can go with this career. I kind of had been on the floor for like almost 15 years at the time. And
Hmm.
kind of was like, I gotta move up. And that's when I had an employer be like, it's really hard to move up unless you don't got your papers. And I went back and I challenged and then I got them. I got my red seal. But then that put me on a different path where I actually was like, maybe I should look into this learning about welding like for real, like the science behind it. And let me tell you, man, if you ever go down that path, it's a rabbit hole, but it'll help. It's really good stuff to know and some of that stuff you can't pick up in the field. It's literally only in a book and it's tough to get.
Hmm. Hmm.
So now that you're welding with your dad, at what point did that turn into, a fitness journey? Like you said, you were a chubby kid out of college.
Yeah,
So at
yeah.
this time, were you like starting to get into fitness kind of on the side and go down that path?
Yeah, like basically, like I said, in university, I met a few really, really good friends who, same thing, were really into sports and fitness, and they kind of got me on that path. And then, just kind of snowballed effect from there, right? Just really was working out, was working days and nights, and doing everything like that, getting, pretty lean at the time and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And you know what? I do a lot of like strength and conditioning type of stuff, right? So there's always equipment in the gym that isn't available at any commercial gym, right? And you look at that, and as a fabricator, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool, but maybe how could I make that a little bit better, or how could I, do that myself, And what's the point of me going to buy that equipment when I can just make it myself? So that's kind of, I always had an idea that it would be like cool to open up, do some sort of fitness stuff. But at the same time, like there's a couple companies out there that just own the entire market. And is that a reality of things? Like, are you gonna, at the end of the day, you love what you do, but are you gonna make money doing it?
Yeah, and I'm sure you looked at some welding equipment too that you'd see a gym bring in, and they'd pay like 10 grand for a rack, and you'd look at the welds and be like, "Oh, come on."
Yeah, no, some stuff, yeah, as a welder, especially when you get into the trade, right? It's all that catches your eyes, different welds around the world, right? And you're just like, oh my God, how is that still standing?
I actually have taken pictures of some pretty shady welds, and it's sometimes funny because I take a picture and show somebody and be like, "Check out this shady weld." And they're like, "Where is that?" It's like it was on an airplane. Like, oh man. Like, so you're starting to get fit. You're getting into the fitness realm where you're thinking about it and starting to appreciate the equipment you're working on as well. And on the side, in a different stream, your welding career is taking off. So you're getting better, you're getting smarter, you're learning lots. And then you said something really important that I think a lot of listeners really need to focus on is like you're looking at these big players in the fitness world and you got this idea and you're like, how am I going to bite into that market? Like, am I going to be able to support myself, or, am I going to be able to make enough money getting into this gig? How did you approach that? Did you think I'm just going to go for it, or did you start small, or, how did that idea start to form in Mike's head?
So in Mike's head, basically, it really only started to form kind of, when gyms were beginning to shut down and whatnot.
Hmm.
I was actually learning AutoCAD at the time, right? We still do, like I said before, all of our drafting by hand. So I was just tinkering around on the computer. And I actually had a buddy just reach out to me and be like, hey, man, like, would you be able to make me a stand? Let me know a cost on that, whatever. So that night, I think I was on the computer for 9, 10 hours just designing my first item.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? He didn't end up buying the first one. It was a little too pricey for him. The price of Canadian steel right now is through the roof. But
Hmm.
that's really how I just started. So I ended up building one for myself, and did a few more after that, a couple different options. And then my wife, my fiance at the time now wife, she was like, you know what, might as well throw it on Kijiji and see what happens, right? So did that, and then next day I got my first kind of sale.
And that's the power of social networking, man. Kijiji, eBay, Instagram. Anyone can be their own business person now with a few clicks, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it also connects you to people you would have never been connected with before, right? So,
Absolutely. Well, this is a great point to stop for a commercial break and get our sponsors in. Thanks everyone for listening to the show. Stay tuned. We're going to be back with Mike and Squat Six Stands and his story. And after the commercial, we're going to get into actually what the business is and what's going on with that. So stay tuned. All right, and we're back here at the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and today's special guest is Michael Kaufmann, who is a owner, operator, designer, creator, inventor, and grandiose esquire of Squat Six Stands. So, Mike, you like that title?
that's an introduction. That's an introduction.
All right. So when we left off before the break, you know, we were at the point where you had the idea. Someone kind of was like, "Hey, can you do this?" And you're like, "Yeah, I think it can." You sell it on Kijiji, and then what happens? You start thinking, "Well, I'm going to build another one, or I'm going to build two." And I'm going to say, I'm looking at your products. These are not drilled holes. There's laser cut. There's designed pieces here. This isn't something that's all 100% just built in your garage. So there's planning, there's ordering, there's material organizing. It looks like some of it's powder coated. Like, how did you get from the Kijiji cell to this?
So yeah, it definitely didn't start that way. I think I built my first 60 racks on the drill press, literally just making up jigs and drilling all day long. I actually had a friend come in and help me out. I would drill all the pilot holes and he would just be opening them up. And I'm telling you, after 12 hours a day of just drilling holes, you have nightmares about it.
Uh,
So it didn't start that way. We really were just making them. It Like I said, we don't have a garage. We got a pretty big shop, and just making them out of there. And then I would make pretty much 8 a week and sell them, and then make another 8 a week. I play things pretty safe with what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was even at the time just spray painting all the racks as well, so I'd be in there doing pretty much everything start to finish.
Like,
And
sorry, go ahead.
no, and then comes a time where you start looking into, like, these guys have some crazy tube laser machines, and the what they
Mm-hmm.
can do with that kind of stuff is insane, right? So a product like mine is pretty simple to make a step file and get it all laser cut. So started then producing it just to get a little cleaner of a look. And yeah.
And it's really not even that much more expensive. People kind of look at that and be like, "Oh man, it's going to be so much more." But the companies that do the cutting and like you said, all the laser and tube cuts, they're buying steel in way bigger quantities than you and I do.
Oh
So
yeah,
so they're
sure.
getting the steel cheaper, and then by the time you pay out for the time in the machine, especially once you got the setup, once you're past the setup, then you can pump a bunch of them out real quick and cheap. It's just that first one that's expensive.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like I said, once all the jigs and fixtures are made, and you know what I mean, you have everything ready to go. After that, it's kind of just like framework. You just, can produce as many or as little as you want. It's that startup that takes the longest, right?
Yeah. And now I'm curious about your dad throughout this process. He's you're in your dad's shop. So I gotta say, like, you're a pretty lucky position to want to start a business because you have access to a shop, you have access to welders, you have access to forklifts. And I mean that takes a big chunk of the heartache that some people gotta go through for startups. But then you got your dad in the corner watching you being like, yo, are you gonna come work with me, or is this like your full-time thing now?
So it's kind of funny because at the time so at Concise Custom Metal, we do commercial work. That's our thing, right? So we're doing a lot of projects that unfortunately were deemed non-essential during the whole
Hmm.
pandemic. So we were really kind of shut down at the time. We had odds and end jobs here and there. Like, I remember at the beginning, I had like 300 linear feet of stainless steel railing just sitting there waiting to be installed that I couldn't do anything with.
Hmm.
So I was fortunate. Not, I can't say fortunate. We're unfortunate that we didn't have much work at the time, but I did have a little bit more personal time to kind of work on this sort of stuff. And it's still today I'm doing both jobs at the same time, right? But like you said, it's not a 9 to 5, it's a 5 to 9. So
Yeah. And then, so do you hire your dad now and be like, "Hey, yo, dad, weld this up for me"?
no, my dad, he's they don't make him like that anymore. He's the hardest worker I've ever known. And I just want to go back to something you said right at the beginning of the podcast. You said, welders, when they come home, they're grumpy and they just want to sit on the couch. Like, that guy does not take a rest day in his life. If it's not in the shop, he's gardening, he's moving soil, he's doing whatever. But he's the one that's really like instilled that hard work value in me. You know what I mean? And even to
Mhm.
this day, he comes into the shop and he looks at a product I've done, and he's always thinking, how can he make this better? How can I help him out? And he's the type of guy that will give the shirt off his back to anybody. And it's that I'm kind of the same way. You know what I mean? Really
Yeah,
grateful
and
for him.
well, and that's so much as having a proper mentor, and that's a topic that we talk about on this podcast all the time. Every success story that I've had on this show, and it's dozens and dozens now, everyone can pinpoint to like that person, whether it's your dad or your first teacher or your coworker, whoever it is in your life. Everyone's kind of got that person that inspires them. And that's, I mean, that's so valuable. And sometimes I look at people that are struggling and not getting somewhere, and you see that they're working hard and you know that they're smart, but they're just not getting anywhere. And I think that they're missing that mentor. They don't have that person that just inspires them.
No, I agree 100%. And if it wasn't for him like going through the struggles that he went through and whatnot, I don't know if I would have a lot of the values that I have today. Um, you know,
Yeah.
and like I
So
said, can't learn stuff like that.
yeah, and it's true. And I'm gonna tie this into another guest that I had, because you're not the first fitness gym equipment builder on my show.
Oh,
And it was interesting because someone sent me this, like, I got people, I got my spies out in the field, right? And they're like checking out who's the talent out in Canada and being like, "Hey, interview this guy." And so they sent it to me and be like, "Hey, this guy's got a wicked thing. I bet you've never had someone who builds gym equipment." And I was like, "Aha, I have." So Valkyrie, Hannah Brock,
Oh
has
yeah.
Yeah, was on my show. She's actually one of my old students, and she's out here in the West, building gear, and very similar story. And so I'm going to ask you, like, I've seen her get into like circuits with her gear. Am I going to see your gear like up on the fitness channel, or is this getting more commercialized now? Are you getting in on some gyms like for full setups, or what's going on with the company?
Yeah, so the cool thing about Squat Six stands is that we can carry complete custom work, right? So I've
Mm.
done a lot of like because that's my bread and butter right there. So we actually have a few gyms in the go that are complete. Like they want their own stuff, they want stuff custom made, they want their own banners, they want their own laser cut stuff on there, and that's the one thing that we can offer to a client as well. So that's the
Mhm.
pull, right? If someone's been putting all this money into building their own gym, they want something that really represents their brand as well. And Squad Six can provide that.
And that's the custom market is forever endless. I've made a living off of it my whole life. I've had a couple of businesses, and I've had fantastic experiences with them. And like when you said earlier in the first half of the show, like I wasn't sure if I could get a piece of that market and make money. For all the listeners, the answer is yes, you can. There is enough room for everyone. There's money to be made everywhere. And if you build it, they will come. You just have to commit to it, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny because even to this day, like I think back a year ago, year and a half ago, and if I didn't take that leap and just do it, I don't know, like, I would still just be, sitting on the couch if we didn't have any other work, so, like, my advice to anybody is, like, try it out, you don't have to go crazy right at the get-go and, order $20,000 worth of steel and all that kinda stuff, but at least, like, give it a shot because if I didn't, I definitely would have regretted it for sure.
Well, and like we were saying, social media, the networks, the community, like the welding community online is insane. And
Oh,
like
yeah.
we all know each other. We all like support each other and help each other. And if a bro or a girl's doing something cool, we share it and be like, hey, check this out, buy this thing. Like we all do that and take advantage of that because we actually care about what we're doing, around the world and what people are doing around the country. Like it's cool and we try to support it.
Mhm, mhm.
So how much do you use social media now? Like was it something that you maybe always were kind of into? Like you always had Facebook, you always had Instagram, blah blah blah. Or was it like now that you have a business, you're like, okay, I gotta do this more?
So yeah, I've always had, Facebook and Instagram and all that, like just like everybody, it's a place to, see what your friends are up to and whatnot. But I'm not good on camera. I'm kind of camera shy type of guy. I'd rather be behind the hood than in front of it. And I really owe it to my wife. She does a lot of the social media stuff, and she really is like, Mike, you got to get on the stories today. You got to do this. You got to do that. So my content may not be as good as majority of people out there, but it's honest content, and I love showing people kind of what I do and where I come from and my day to day life, and people see how much work goes into this type of stuff, and they love it. So
Well, it makes it real, right? It makes it not just some like, some nameless shop where products just show up and you don't know anything about it, right? Like it's got a face to it, it's got a story to it, and that's worth a lot.
oh, absolutely. I 100% agree. Like if I'm going shopping for something that's like unique or whatnot, and I see the guy that's he's making it by hand and he's taking his time and putting effort into it, like that to me is worth more than any price tag.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And if you are thinking about getting into business for yourself, there's a couple really good key pieces of advice that Mike's given here. Is number one, you don't have to go in, arms deep, hip deep with $20,000 of steel to start that first thing. The world's not like that anymore. It might have been the way the boomers had to do it, but I mean, it was any boomer could walk into a bank and get $1 million loan. Like, I mean, the world's not like that anymore. Now, build the one thing, get a good idea, use social media, sell it, improve it, sell it, get a reputation, work the system, and the system's free, you know?
Oh, I 100% agree. And another thing I could add to that is like just be a personable person. And when it comes to customer service, I think that trumps all as well. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So I really owe kind of a lot of my success to my early customers who trusted me to build them a cool product, and I delivered, and they love it. So they spread the word, other people spread the word, and it just kind of snowballs from there.
And, that's funny because you'll always remember for, like, your entire life, someone that treated you shitty, in a business or a deal or something, somebody that just totally snubbed you or screwed you or you remember that, you take that to heart.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, and that's why you try not to have those things. And if they do happen, you take it as kind of like a learning experience and go from there.
Well, that's a great point because in business, it's not always peaches and cream. Sometimes things go sideways. It happens. Sometimes things don't work. Sometimes things get more expensive. But you just got to be honest about it and be like, "Hey, yo, this is what's happening. I'm sorry. Let's work this out." That's respectable way to deal with something.
Absolutely. And sometimes things are 100% out of your control. You know what I mean? Especially in a business
Mhm.
like this, I rely on third parties for shipping and all that kind of stuff. And if something goes wrong in that aspect and you just say to your customer, listen, it's going to be a couple days delayed. We're going to make it right for you. 99% of people understand that as well. So you can't really take that as a negative. You kind of got to take that as a growing experience and just
Mhm.
keep working. So
No, it's very, very true. Like literally today, I ordered like 200 feet of steel, and then they're like, "Yeah, okay, we got like a third of it here. The other two thirds is like 3 weeks away." It's like, oh, come on, oh man.
story of my life, trying to pick up 3x2 11 gauge HSS. It's out of stock everywhere.
And
Crazy, crazy.
it's funny because they sometimes like I got my price quote today and it didn't say on there 3 weeks away. So I was like, yeah, okay, order it in. I'll pick it up tomorrow. They're like, well, it's not here for 3 weeks. It's like, oh, you could have put that in the PO, man. Like,
Yeah. Oh man, yeah.
so now what's the big picture, Mike? Like, you got your company going. Um, are you looking at getting your own shop, hiring people? Like, are you gonna push this as far as it'll go, or are you kind of just comfortable where you are and just letting it happen on its own?
I'm always working. I'm trying to develop some new products right now. You know what I mean? I have something cool that's going to be dropping in about a month. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to streamline things a little bit more, hiring a couple people here and there just to help me out when I can.
Mhm.
Squad six stands is still Mike Kaufmann, but yeah, we're taking it in stride and just seeing where this goes. So um
And
I
is your wife an official staff member? Is she a social media expert now?
Oh, she's been unreal during the entire experience. Like if it wasn't for her, like I said, I barely could get on this podcast with the technology. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have any social media, any website, anything. So no, I owe a lot to her because she's really like the backbone of Squad Six for sure.
And like, what's your outreach? I'm curious. Like with your, you said you've only been around a year and a half. Like, I mean, this is still fresh. Are you selling like around the world? Are you mainly in Canada? Like, tell me about some of your customers.
Yeah, no, we're in Canada, so we ship Canada wide, and we've shipped as far as BC to Alberta, Manitoba. We've shipped to Quebec, and the one thing is people love being able to do a local pickup in the city.
Hmm.
And I've had people drive from Kingston that drive from Montreal to do a local pickup. And not only do they get to come and kind of see where the product's made, they get to meet me, and really like just shows that there's like a human behind the product as well.
Awesome, man. I love to hear that. Now, as you are looking to get this exposure and new products out and everything going on, do you see maybe like when the pandemic is over, whenever that is, or whatever version of that future is, do you think that maybe just trends wise, you think fitness requirements will go down? You think people will be still as invested into fitness, or do you think it's a up and down thing? Like, I've never been able to really gauge that market.
I personally think that home fitness is here to stay.
Hmm.
I've personally found huge value in being able to go, work a 13, 14-hour day and go home and have a 30-minute workout in your own house and just, shower up and go to bed after.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing around that question is too is that I still think the social aspect around the gym is here to stay as well. People are always going to go back to commercial gyms, but I think people really will be finding the value in home gyms and that sort of setup. And another thing I gotta really say is I think that Canadian product is huge. You know what I mean? To
Hmm.
manufacture in your own backyard and to support a Canadian company and know that all your steel that's coming to you is locally sourced and all that kind of stuff using local manufacturers. And I think that aspect is really here to stay as well.
And that's 100% why I do the podcast. It's 100% why I work now for the association, which I never thought I would end up working for CWB. But it's just, I was looking in my life at ways that I could help the industry more for Canada. Like, how can I connect more Canadian stories? How can I connect more Canadian companies? What do I need to do that? And this is this type of stuff I'm doing. The you being on the show is exactly the point of what these jobs are about, right?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And it's also, I think, like the best thing about having people on the show in all different types of industries. Like, yes, we're all welders, but we all do different things. Is showing people like the vast amount of things you can do with one sort of skill set. You know what I mean? Like whether it's fitness equipment, whether you're a pipe welder, whether you're doing structural welds all day, or you're in a fab shop or anything like that. Like, there's so much creativity behind welding, and I think like I'm lucky enough to get to wake up and melt steel with fire every single day, and I just love it. So,
It's like whenever you start teaching someone young welding for the first time and you're just like, behold the power of steel.
that's it. That's it. It's excuse my French here, but it's badass. So
It is a very badass trade. I'm gonna be a little Debbie Downer for all the listeners here. I just got a report today from the apprenticeship like Forum of Canada saying that we're not even producing 50% of the welders that we need to keep up to industry. So if we want Canada to be like a number one producer of products in this world, and we want our welding industry to grow and be awesome, and we want to have these opportunities like Mike and all the people I've had on the show who are able to produce with Canadian products, Canadian companies, Canadian suppliers, and make Canadian and service Canadian people, we need to get more welders. Like, we need the people out there. We need the people get training. We need people to get in the shops, and I don't know how to do that. Like, I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to find ways, but we need 1,000 mics in Toronto is what I'm saying somehow.
yeah, but this is an awesome start for it because people
Mm.
can really see, what like who would have ever really thought like I'm really into fitness and I'm a welder. Let's put two and two together.
Yeah.
When I thought about welding when I was 18 or 19, I thought about like, slugging a steel beam across the shop floor and, being dirty and my hands black. And now I just like it's part of me and I absolutely love it. So
Awesome, man. Well, we're coming up on the end of the show. This has been super fun. I'm going to ask you, the same question, and you can take all the time you want. But it's something that I ask every guest, and that's for a piece of advice. So, if you're a young person, let's say you're coming out. Let's go with your situation. Let's say you just graduated with an arts degree from university, and you're kind of not sure what you should do. And you're looking at the jobs postings, and there's welding jobs there. What would you give as a piece of advice to that person who's unsure about their career path now and is just starting to think about possibly going into welding?
I think if you like working hard and you're thinking about looking into a trade or whatnot, I definitely think everybody should at least try to give it a shot and see if they like it or not. I mean, it's not for everybody, but you just never know what how how you would love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a skill set. It's like a tool, man. Like, it doesn't let's say you try it and then you don't like it, but you can still always have that in your back pocket if you need it. You know what I
Oh,
mean? And
100%. And I've met a few drywall foremen in my life who were welders, until they were 24, 25 years old and switched trades. But at the end of the day, the rules of thumb are still the same.
mhm. One of my best students I ever had is a hairdresser, and I just love his path because it was so cool. Like, he came into welding school fresh out of high school and was like, I'm gonna be a welder and make money. And he like graduated like top of the class, got hired like right away, started making some really good bank. Next thing you know, I run into him on the street. I'm like, how's welding going? He's like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm like, what? Like, you're like my star student. Like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I really fell in love with fashion and hair. And so I made enough money to, buy a house, and now I can go back to school without no stress. And I'm going to, try a new career. And then I'm going to open my own salon. And he did it. And he wouldn't have been able to do that if he didn't go into welding first to give him that opportunity to, pursue that second career, which is completely not connected. And I think that's an awesome story.
Absolutely. And it also helps that now he has a steady hand, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, you need the hands of a surgeon, man.
That's it.
All right, man. Well, I've really enjoyed having you on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time here, Mike.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, can't wait to
Okay.
hear some more.
Yeah, and get your shout outs now. I'll give you a couple seconds here. Tell us your website, your webpage, your Instagram handle. Just throw it all out there for everybody.
That's it. So you can check us out on at Instagram at Squat6Stands, or we have a website, www.squat6standstoronto.ca, for all your Canadian-made fitness equipment desires.
Awesome. And so everyone's listening, it's squat 6 with the number 6 stands. All right. And when this podcast comes out, we'll hit up all your tags. We'll share it all with you, and we'll make sure that everything's linked up properly for you.
Appreciate it.
All right. And for all the listeners, thanks again for tuning in for another great edition here. Make sure you stay tuned and keep following the podcast. Every week we got something new and another crazy story. Lots of fun, interesting life stories from around the world in the welding community. So thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to the CWB Association Welding Podcast with Max Ceron. If you enjoyed what you heard today, rate our podcast and visit us at cwbassociation.org to learn more. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions or suggestions on what you'd like to learn about in the future. Produced by the CWB Group and presented by Max Ceron. This podcast serves to educate and connect the welding community. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.